So welcome to Launch Sunday. We're going to talk about suffering and pain. Nice, light one. It is just how we roll. Jesus of Nazareth once said, "In this world, you will face trouble." Suffering comes to find all of us. The loss of a loved one, a cancer diagnosis, the breakdown of a relationship. Maybe some of you have just come out of a season of long suffering, trying to get your bearings. I'm kind of in that right now. Or maybe you're entering in, or you're still in it, trying to come up for air, wondering why you don't feel God's presence like you used to, what St. John of the Cross called the dark night of the soul. And over time, emotional pain kind of accumulates in our soul. We carry our history in our body. We live our past in our present. It's like we just can't move on. And all too often, unhealed emotional pain sabotages any attempt at becoming like Jesus. So when pain and suffering come knocking, what do? Over the past few weeks, we have taken a look at what Jesus had in mind for discipleship to him, or probably a better English word that we would have for that is an apprentice. Because if you're an apprentice after a plumber, for example, is the goal for you to just learn all of the theology and doctrine of plumbing? No, it's to plumb a house. Same with discipleship to Jesus. It's to reorient your life around three goals: to be with him, to become like him, to do as he did. And we spent a lot of time over the past couple weeks working through goal 2, becoming like him, because that is the bleeding heart of an apprentice of Jesus. We've seen that spiritual formation, the fancy word that the scriptures use for this process of becoming like Jesus, it's not a Christian thing. It is a human thing. You have been formed before you took your first breath. And most of our formation is unintentional. What I mean by that is you just kind of wake up and it happens to you. Because we're formed by a complex interplay of forces like our good or bad habits, right? Or the relationships that we surround ourselves with, the stories that you've bought into to make you happy. Your environment plays on you, be it in a city or rural context, the digital space, and all of that happens over time and through experiences that you pick up along the way. Maybe it was trauma, family of origin, whatever it is. This stuff happens and you just wake up and it happens to you. And then you realize, I've changed without any intentionality. So to become like Jesus, we saw that it requires some form of counter formation for the stories that we've bought into to make us happy. We have to see, well, what did Jesus say through teaching? Through relationships and echo chambers that we exist in, we have to then be in community with people that grind your gears and round out kind of the rough edges. For habits that we get stuck in, Jesus had a lifestyle of practices. And remember, they aren't earning you anything. We looked at practices. They're not a form of merit. They're not even a measure of spiritual maturity. They are a means to an end, to become a kind of person that can obey Jesus. And the Spirit uses all of these things to make us more like him. It's a partnership. And remember, this happens over time. I love this by James Houston. He says, formation is the slowest of all human movements, and it happens through suffering, which is on the docket for today. Now, let's back up. I love the practices. Let's shoot straight for a minute. Maybe your experience with the practices over the last few weeks or in general was just pure bliss. You are now a saint and you are drawn into the Trinity's inner life of love. Or maybe not, because you're asking the question, what the heck is going on? Am I doing this right? Am I doing enough? Comes up. When I first kind of started the inner journey, beginning to slow down my life to be more present to God, there were in times of prayer, I kid you not, instead of feeling at peace, I would feel really angry. There got to a point where I hated reading the Psalms. I know that's blasphemy for a pastor to hate the Bible, but I hated the Psalms. Feeling anxiety over my future. I would find myself what psychologists would call afflictive thoughts. If that is your experience, you are not alone. And oftentimes, people are really scared to go and be quiet and present to God because they're afraid of what they might find there or what they might not find there. Oftentimes, what happens when we do this stuff and we slow down is all of this undigested emotional pain that we've just kind of pushed down from the busyness of life. It starts to bubble up from the surface of our heart. Thomas Keating called this the unloading of the unconscious. He says when we commit ourselves to the spiritual journey, the first thing the Spirit does is start removing the emotional junk of a lifetime that's inside of us. So when this happens, that doesn't mean you're, quote, bad at the practices, okay? They're not a religious formula to kind of habit stack your way to Christ-like character. No, they create time and space for all of the unprocessed emotional pain of a lifetime, from childhood wounds 20 years ago to the passing slight from a coworker the day before. All of that is allowed to come out of the shadow and into the light. If you let it, pain is an invitation from your soul to explore kind of the origin of where that started. Think about the role of physical pain in your body. When you get hurt, your body is kind of forcing you to give attention to that part of you in need of attention. Its pain is a signal to your mind, something is wrong with your body. It's the same with emotional pain. It's often a signal from our soul that some aspect of our person is in need of healing. But the problem is, the modern world does not know how to deal with pain. There's typically three kind of cultural responses to pain. The first is to deny it. Okay, you just deny that you have pain. This is a really popular one in Christian circles, because it's really easy for us to spiritualize our denial as faith in God. Psychologist John Wellwood would call this spiritual bypassing, and the way he describes that is a tendency to use spiritual ideas or practices to kind of sidestep or avoid facing emotional issues, psychological wounds, or unfinished developmental tasks. This sounds a lot like, quote, just pray about it, or, quote, just have faith, or, quote, God has a plan. That is a futile attempt to co-opt Christian theology of hope to skip over your pain. It doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work long term because honestly, it kind of does work short term. That's why we do it. But it's a short term strategy and it's incredibly dangerous. I mean, again, think about physical pain. If you got hurt and it's not dangerous, your body kind of will self-heal, right? Give it a few days, weeks. But if you have a pain that in your body that does not go away, it is highly likely that something is seriously wrong. And you can deny it, you can ignore it, you can pretend that it's not real, but it could and will grow, it could damage, and it could even kill you long term. It's the same with emotional pain. If we refuse to face what's in our inner life, it has the most power over us. But the second option that normally people do is to detach. You just emotionally disconnect from your feelings. Where are my introverts at? That's what I do. Certain personality types seem to have the ability to just cut off their emotional pain. When we cut off our pain, we inadvertently, though, cut ourselves off from a whole spectrum of emotion. We don't feel lows or sadness, but then we also don't feel joy or wonder or gratitude. And of course, the third popular way people deal with pain is to drug it. Most literally might drug their pain, be it alcohol, cannabis, pain meds. But a lot of us more figuratively enter your cultural narcotic of choice, your career, sex, romance, social media, entertainment, TV, video games. Y'all, we can use just about anything to distract ourselves from pain and from our God, rather than a pathway through our pain. See, if we turn to drugs, either literally or figuratively, there is a momentary relief from pain. But ultimately what happens, anxiety or sadness gets way worse, not better. And none of these ways are also how Jesus dealt with pain, because the way that Jesus dealt with pain was to meet God in his pain. Let's read again Matthew 26, which is arguably the most painful moment in Jesus' life. It is the night before the cross. He is feeling the weight of what's coming. Judas is about to betray him. His best friend is about to deny him. His disciples abandon him. He is rejected, humiliated, tortured, and then killed. What does he do, though? Does he deny it? Does he kind of attach from his emotions? It's okay, God has a plan, other people have it way worse. It is what it is. Does he drug, knowing he's going to die the next day, so let me just absolutely live it up tonight? What does he do? He goes to a quiet place, to a garden with his closest friends, and he says to them, Matthew 26, sit here while I go over there and pray. And he took Peter and the two sons, James and John, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. And then he said to them, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. He's like begging his guys, can you just be with me? And going a little further, he fell with his face to the ground. He prayed, my Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. Notice that line, he began to be sorrowful. What he's doing there is he intentionally makes space. He intentionally makes space for all of the feelings, all of the sadness to come up and rise up in him, and he meets God in his pain. And he meets him by offering his pain to God. This practice is what has been called lament. This is what Pastor Pete Scazzaro calls emotionally healthy spirituality. His thesis, and I love this, it is impossible to be spiritually mature while remaining emotionally immature. Listen, you can know all the Bible in the world and still be a total jerk, full stop, because of all of the unresolved wounds that you just will not let go or deal with. Emotional health, listen, it doesn't mean you're happy all the time. I mean, Jesus was the most emotionally healthy person to ever live, and it says he's sweating blood because he's so anxious. Emotionally healthy? Some might say he's manic. No, emotional health means he's aware of feelings, meaning he can notice and name his inner life, but he's not run by them. He has the capacity to sit with them, let his body process them before God in prayer without them causing him to behave in unloving ways. Psychologists call that emotional regulation. The New Testament calls it self-control. Because to be emotionally healthy means we have to go on the inner journey, as some call it, to meet God in our pain. We have to learn how to pray our pain to God and to share our pain with one another. That's why many find therapy a key part of the inner journey. I have. Shout out to Tim. Processing our pain with another, I didn't say his last name, so he's good. Processing our pain with another wiser, loving soul can be deeply healing. And through practices like silence, solitude, prayer, therapy, friendship, we create time and space to process pain and suffering with God in community. Because listen, if you don't, you will leak out unprocessed pain onto others and damage them. And listen, I wish that wasn't true, but pain and suffering, they are inevitable in this life. Jesus, this is a promise. In this world, you will face trouble. Not may, but will. Okay, and this leads to a massive question that so many, probably all of us have wrestled with. Well, if God is so good, why is there suffering? And there could be multiple teachings on that. I just want to give a few thoughts. Let's grab coffee if you want, if you'll just bear with me, just a few thoughts. Callisto Ware once said that we are born into an environment where it is easy to do evil and hard to do good. It is easy to hurt others and hard to heal their wounds. Brittany last week showed us that suffering can be brought on from sin that we do, sin that's done to us, and sin and evil done around us. That third one, sin and evil done around us, that is the reality that we are born into. We exist in contested space. We've talked about this at length over 2 sermons. I won't go too much into it. You can find those on the website. They're called Gods of Darkness and Light in Dark Places. But Michael Heiser once said that the Great Commission is spiritual warfare. Suffering is inevitable because there are opposing wills that are contesting God's space. When we are baptized and join into the family of God, we enter into a turf war, meaning when we do God's will, we're joining him in putting the world to rights. And that means war, but not against flesh and blood. I think a lot of us get that wrong. Quote, they is our enemy, whoever they is, right? In our context right now, that either means the liberals or conservatives. But you are badly mistaken, Paul says. Your enemies are those who are opposed to God, the rebel spiritual beings. And we need to see how the New Testament saw our present pain and suffering as a result of spiritual evil. And some of us really struggle with that one. I get it. There are traditions out there that have really hijacked that, over-sensationalized everything, like Satan's behind everything. But I think a lot of us swung the other way, where we just totally ripped out all the magic in the air. It's called disenchantment. But listen, Jesus and the New Testament writers were not stupid. They were not unintelligent. They had a grasp on reality. He says, you will have trouble. Our enemies, his enemies, they have lost, but that almost makes them more dangerous. We will encounter suffering, illness, evil, not because you, quote, don't have enough faith. It's because you're a human, and Satan hates the image of God in you. If you're a human, you're a target. And you will suffer in some capacity. There is no version of life where you won't feel pain. Jesus was betrayed, abandoned, falsely accused, killed. Isaiah called him a man of suffering, familiar with pain. Hebrews says we don't have a high priest who can't empathize, not sympathize. That's a softer word. Empathize means to feel into. He knows how you feel. And while a few of us have never felt the level of trauma that Jesus did, we have been hurt. We have been wounded. And left unhealed, that hurt and anger, it will fester in your soul. And again, it will undermine any best intention to become like him. Hurt people, as the saying goes. But, and some of you are like, my gosh, where's the good news? Jesus went on to say, in that same breath, you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. Because of his incarnation, crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension, there is no pain or suffering that is meaningless. There are worldviews out there that say that that is meaningless, and worldviews that don't even believe God is real. But in a worldview that holds to the scriptures, death and all of his friends have been overcome, which means, this is important, the very pain and suffering that can sabotage your formation, they could actually be a secret to it. the risen Christ, has power to take any evil and turn it for good. Evil that God didn't do, by the way. That's a sidebar. When people throw around the word sovereignty, God inevitably gets blamed for evil because we don't really know what to say. So we say God has a plan, right? No, God is not behind child abuse. He is not behind death. His plan is for wholeness and restoration. And no matter how heinous evil brought into the world by the rebel gods of darkness, he's so much more powerful than them that he can turn it for good. I mean, look at what Romans says. And know this, that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who've been called according to his purpose. James says, consider it joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance, and let that finish its work so that you may not be lacking in anything. Peter adds this, for a little while, you will have to suffer grief. But these come so that what does it say? These have come so the proven genuineness of your faith is greater worth than gold. Do you see it? The very pain that we want to deny, detach, or drug, it can be the very pathway to transformation. It can make you hard and closed off to God, and that happens a lot. Or it can make you soft or open to him if we, like Jesus, will meet God in our pain. So in closing, suffering is never fun to talk about. And some of you might be in pain right now. And the essential question in difficult times is this: how do we let suffering form us, not deform us? We have to accept what Jesus was inviting us into. There's a metaphor I find really helpful by a psychologist, Larry Crabb. He says, imagine your emotional life like that of an iceberg. Above the surface is what Dr. Crabb calls the managed life, where the focus on life is just living by a set of principles to be successful. Your driving question is this: how do I look and feel good? But inevitably we get hurt. We get betrayed, we get rejected, and we get let down. And we slip into what he calls then the wounded life, where then the driving question is this: how the heck do I get back to looking and feeling good? That's real, right? And most of our life is here, below the surface, where most of us are just trying to get out of it. We're trying to go up, but Jesus invites us into it and to go deeper, to meet God in our pain with what he calls the formed life, where the question becomes, what is God doing through this and in me? That, by the way, is the question of an apprentice of Jesus. That means we don't have to fear suffering. He says, don't let your heart be troubled. We don't have to seek it out. It's going to come for us. But when it does, if we meet God in it, he can turn it for good if we surrender to him. And we can say with that beautiful line by Julian of Norwich, all will be well, and all manner of thing will be well. Or the late Presbyterian pastor Tim Keller, he said, if Jesus really did raise from the dead, and he had terminal cancer, by the way, when he said this, everything's going to be okay. So, the practice this week. We like to practice what is communicated. We don't like to just talk about it. We want to be about it. So the practice for this week is to notice and name your emotions. The journey of emotional health involves learning to notice and name emotion in the presence of God, not to avoid it. When we notice and name, they have less power over us. This is really fascinating. But if you were to do a brain scan on someone who would notice or name a painful emotion, let's say fear, anger, jealousy, the very act of doing that quiets that emotion. Isn't that interesting? Psychiatrist Dan Siegel encourages us to name it and to tame it. So this week for our practice, we are inviting you during your rhythm of daily prayer to set aside a time, a particular day. It could be a specific time for a specific prayer practice called noticing or naming emotion. And the purpose, again, is to bring your emotion to God and to experience his love and presence. Is that? Yeah, very good. So we use this really long list in our bands. It allows us to get really specific with that thing that we're feeling. Because if you're like me and you ask me, how are you doing? I just say fine, because I really don't know what to say. But when I have a list, I can say, oh, I'm like disenchanted, or what is there? Demoralized. Yeah, that's a good one. So the first part of this is to notice again, and then be specific, to name that emotion. And I'll list this. We send out a weekly email that you can have this list for. But as you name your emotion, give yourself space to feel that emotion. Don't fight it. Don't judge it. Because when we fight it, it only gets bigger, not smaller. So let the emotion rise like a wave, peak, and then pass you by. And then simply and finally offer that feeling to God. Express your emotion to God and entrust your life to him. So, again, some of you might do this. You might have a profound experience. But the majority of us are going to say, again, am I doing this right? Because I'm not really feeling anything. Like most practices, the deepest impact is to stick with it, and it happens over time. Don't feel pressure. Just give it a try. As you engage with this regularly and you seek to open your inner life to him, may God give you courage and peace this week as you name your emotions. Come, Holy Spirit. Even now, I just pray that you, whatever we may be internalizing or even just thinking as we talk about a thing like suffering or pain, I think a lot of us maybe are going back and there's real fear. I pray you give us boldness just to notice and name, because undigested emotional pain, it does war on our soul. You are a comforter. That is one of your very titles. So come, Holy Spirit, would you comfort us even now as we take time just to pause and to process what you may be inviting us into. I pray that in Jesus' name. Amen.